I first showed up, then I had to stay someplace. So he put me in this house he had on the beach, you know, and a nice house. And then I find my neighbors tell me that he used to lease it to the Rolling Stones, and and Keith Richards lived down the street. He was my neighbor.
Wait, while you were staying there?
Yeah, when I was living there, he lived because in fact Keith Richards' autobiography, he says I was living on this house on the beach, and my landlord at the time, Ernest Matt, picked me up and showed me this house I should buy, and I bought it and I own it to this day.
That's your house.
Yeah, that's the house I was living in. Yeah.
Bismarck, Mandan, North Dakota is about the most inland you can be in the world. Like it's very close to the geographic center of North America. And in Mandan, North Dakota is a dive shop with world-class experiences. It's not what everyone would expect. I had the opportunity to get to know our guest, Randy Kraft, by learning how to scuba dive for the very first time, and did the class, and then did the pool, and then did the open water. And it was an absolute riot, and it is that experience is like why I live in North Dakota, why I love to be here. So thanks, Randy, for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so here's my question. You grew up in this area, right? So how did you get into diving?
Yeah, I graduated from Oregon State, and when I was there, I took scuba, and then from there for spring break, I went to the Bahamas for spring break, and then went on my first scuba trip. Then when I graduated and I was trying to find, my next step, so to speak, there was a 10-week program for teaching scuba in San Diego, and I thought, while I'm trying to, find myself, I'll go to this 10-week school, and then I'll play with that, and then I'll move on to what I went to school for, what I went to college for, and eventually move on and build a career in some other field, quite frankly. And so then I went to we worked through PADI, which stands for Professional Association of Diving Instructors, and they had a PADI College, which was a 10-week program, and they and the industry standard is to go work through your local local dive center, so to speak, to become a dive master, and then once you're a dive master, you can go to a 10-day instructor class. Well, this course was a 10-week course as opposed to a 10-day course. Okay, so then I came home. I was broke, and then came home, and this was in '83, so 40 years ago now. And so I was looking for work, and the oil boom had just busted, and I started teaching some classes, and that was working, keeping me going. But at the same time, it was winter was coming, and after my second year here, and it got cold, and I called the school. They had a placement service, so I called them, and they said, "Oh, this guy in Jamaica is looking for help." So I thought, well, I'm still trying to find myself in my career, and I thought, well, I might as well go to Jamaica, and so I went down there, and it turned out they were just opening a new resort, so to speak, they needed to hire an instructor, and there was a shortage of them in Jamaica. So I was brought in as the water sports director and scuba director, even though I was from North Dakota, and I had never there were plenty of qualified Jamaicans to run that kind of a program, but they didn't have the qualifications to teach scuba or my education, so to speak. So I walked in, from North Dakota to be the director of this water sports program, and it was a couples-based hotel. It was a honeymoon kind of place. And in fact, but it was to make a long story short, I worked for the concessionaire that had the water sports, but the government owned the hotel at that time, and they were leasing it to another company, and so it was always a third-party relationship, so to speak, at that point. And so I came and went to a certain extent, but I stayed in touch. I worked with the same people up until for 40 years, basically, because it had been a couple of years, for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, so as an example, they they had other hotels too that we had contracts with, but there was a primarily I worked with this honeymoon resort. In fact, when I left, it was a great job, and in many respects, but I quit 4 times. Okay, so it shows you that it took me back every time, and we had a good relationship right up to the guy I worked for passed away a couple years ago now. And the last time I saw him was when they were filming the James Bond movie, the latest James Bond movie at his property, and I met with them, and they said that I said, how come you're not using your house? Because he said there were 3. He said I told him I couldn't use the house because that was my private house, but they could only use the grounds, and they had 3 sound stages set up for on his property, and that would have been in 2019 or 18. So the point is, then he passed away in 2020, a couple years later. I talked to him on the phone a couple weeks before I got sick. So the point is that all these years later, we were still had a good relationship.
Yeah.
A long time ago now, I went after I quit one of the time last time I did, I guess. At that, now I shouldn't say that either because I actually worked with him on a number of projects. He owned hotels in Grand Cayman, for instance, and so then he owned those hotels as opposed to managing the.
So you were kind of his Johnny on the spot.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, I did other. I started out as a scuba water sports person, but at the same time, I could go down and I knew the properties, I understood the programs, and I could give him insight that he wouldn't see because he was not necessarily there.
So in 1984, you said?
Yeah, thereabouts.
1984 or
Yeah.
So. White kid from
Exactly,
North Dakota
exactly, yeah.
comes and
yeah.
you got the job.
Right, I was the only one that applied.
Okay, you're only one that applied,
yeah.
only one that's qualified.
Yeah, exactly.
And
yeah.
then so how did that process go?
Oh, that was I see. He was a pretty major businessman in town, so to speak, and on the island, in fact, and so that was weird because I was the only foreigner in the company, and there was a couple hundred employees, and so it was quite a there was a culture issues,
Sure.
But I right up till I recently, I mean, we still, like I said, we were still friends till the end, and I worked with the same people, and we got along to the end, so to speak. I mean, it wasn't really an end either.
What's this guy's name?
Ernie Smat. Which you could Google him. In fact, the first house I moved, he also owned a string of houses that he rented out, and that he had, and so when I first showed up, then I had to stay someplace, so he put me in this house he had on the beach, and a nice house, but it was just there, and because it was empty, not because and then I find my neighbors tell me that he used to lease it to the Rolling Stones. And and Keith Richards lived down the street. He was my neighbor.
Wait, while you were staying there? Keith
When I was living there, he lived not because in fact Keith Richards' autobiography, he says I was living on this house on the beach, and my landlord at the time, Ernie Smat, picked me up and showed me this house I should buy, and I bought it and I own it to this day.
That's your house.
Yeah, that's the house I was living in. Yeah, and so then. That first house I lived in, then over time he'd get like a tent, he'd like rent it, So he rented a house across the street later on that I lived in, and then he got me another place. I lived in a number of houses.
So you are early 20s.
Yeah, exactly.
Early 20s.
Yeah.
New area, living like a Rolling Stone.
Well, yes and no. Yeah. Highs were high, but the lows were low too.
Okay. What do you mean lows were low?
Well, the politics and being a foreigner and instability. Sure. In fact, Keith Richards had a wooden boat and he sold it to a guy an English guy, and so I used to drive it while he'd try to work on it, because it didn't run worth. But it was a Riva. It was a really cool boat. And in his autobiography, he goes on and on about his boat. It's the same boat, but we couldn't keep it running. And then, but he told the guy that he sold it to that it was Mick Jagger's boat because, of course, Mick Jagger was the cool one, and he was just the guy that lived on the street, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I could talk about this for all day on
That's awesome.
I had no idea you were gonna have Rolling Stones
stories. Yeah. But so the point is it's actually in his autobiography. The story about the house and the boat is all in there.
Yeah.
So it's all in writing. And Johnny Depp's blog, he says that the best part of Keith Richards' autobiography is the part about the boat. Which is kind of cool. And what else? Good.
Yeah.
I later saw the boat when I was working for ABC. I spent a better part of a winter working for ABC TV as a stand-in. Whatever.
Extra stand. Okay,
yeah.
so you would be so you're a scuba diver.
No, and it had nothing to do with scuba.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, I was just an extra.
Yeah, okay.
Stand-in. I found that the stand-in's the guy that made twice as much money as the extras. So I nobody seemed to know that, I guess. So I volunteered, to.
So
I did that. That was.
Are there any feature films that we could like zoom in and see?
You could.
Really?
You can. It was called Passion in Paradise. It was. Yes, and it's on YouTube now. And it's and you can see me in the courtroom, which is another story. But this I kept thinking.
Yeah.
That it was how can I say it? Just an abandoned building, and here they were still using it as a courtroom.
Yeah.
And they're based on English. They had based on English law, so to speak. So in other words, the judges still wore the wigs.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just made up because the movie was based on World War II story, and I thought maybe that and so I made a joke about, and here they were wearing wigs, English. In the courtroom. That wasn't, but this was based on I wasn't in there when they were using it for court, so to speak.
What was your favorite moment in the good old days at Jamaica?
Oh, I don't know. The parts on the work. See, I worked on the beach too. I literally worked on the beach because I was a water sports, which was the best part of it. But the best, boy, I don't know what would be, separated out. See, what else can I tell you? Okay, so then in later on, after I left, I knew the hotel was in transitions. They were trying to be in transition. And anyway, so Sandals took over. Sandals Resorts they took over management of that property, and they called me and they flew me down to see about coming back to work. But then there was the work permits and stuff. We chased that around and so I didn't go back, quite frankly. And I kept in touch with them right to the right. In fact, now they managed it and at that time in 1990, and then but they just bought it. It just opened up last month as Sandals Duns River, which is supposed to be is now their new flagship property, and that's the one I worked at. But then after I left that part of the program, then I started working in approximately early 90s. I met my wife and I said, "Say, I got a buddy that runs a hotel in Jamaica who used to run the hotel in question, the first what's now Sandals Duns River, and I bet if I call him and get a good buy on a hotel on a stay, So I faxed him at the time, and he said, yeah. He said, well, I'll comp you if you come down and take a look, go diving and go diving and take a look and then let me know what you see, and I'll comp you, So we did that, and it was all inclusive, which was great. So we went down, we did that property, and when I came home, then I get a fax from him. He said I wrote a report, of course, and then I got a fax. He said, "Great report. When can you go to this other? Can you go to this other hotel and do the same thing?" Well, what happened is he became director of operations for super clubs, and he had me go into all their properties that they had diving programs. They had 8 in-house diving programs.
Yeah.
And so I did that for until they went out of business, right from the early 90s until super clubs, probably 10 years ago now or so. But even then, I followed some of the managers around up until.
Sure.
Just
Did
last
you
few
do
years.
a lot of shipwreck dives?
Yeah, they have a number of wrecks in Jamaica. But it isn't, and it wasn't just Jamaica that super clubs had properties. They had one in Curacao, Bahamas, Nassau. They had, so I did. They had the Breezes in Nassau was theirs. I'd see them there, and that's where they had their operations offices. So I would get to the Bahamas pretty regular because that's where their offices were. And Curacao was a more serious scuba property at the time, and so I'd visit them. And then, in fact, the guy that ran that hotel, when super clubs went out of business, he became he went to work for Sandals then, because he ran the Sandals in Nassau. Then he ran the Sandals in the beaches in the Grill, Jamaica. And then they brought us in for that trip too. They threw a party for him, a Welcome Back to Jamaica event, and so they brought us in for that. And then then he retired, so to speak. So now he's water sports. He's a marine maintenance manager for the Sandals Beaches resort chain. Yeah. So he always had the water sports bug, but he had graduated from an Ivy League U.S. school, so in hotel management. So he had to be a hotel. He ran these hotels. But anyway, but he really wanted to be a water sport. Water sports was his thing. His boat. So I still see him. I went boating with him, and I saw him just a couple months ago. We still keep in touch. And the last time I talked to my initial Jamaican boss was when I called when I met the guy that went to work was with Sandals. I called him and said, "Call Gary and congratulate him on his new job." And he said, "Well, what's he doing?" And he said, "Well, he's the marine maintenance manager for his Sandals." He said, "Well, isn't that a demotion? From going from a general manager to being the water sport?" No, I said he always wanted your job. I said, and so now he has it. So he did. He called him that day and congratulated him, and then he tried selling him on some of his boats, that he was trying to get rid of. But the point is that that would have been in 2020. I mean, so the point is that all these years later, I was still associating with the people.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The people from the early 80s.
Those wrecks that you would dive, so there would be newlywed couples, and
Mostly,
then you would do a one-day training.
Good point. At that time, that was all the resort. There was quite a number of these honeymoon resorts, and these all-inclusive. The all-inclusive concept started in Jamaica during that time. So, and they included. The theory was that they were going to include everything, including scuba. But they didn't really understand at that time. They didn't really understand the logistics of. I mean, you can't. I mean, people. It's not like playing golf. You don't get hurt playing golf. So you can, as opposed to scuba. So So they started out. We would include a pool session, and then that was included in the package, and an open water session. So to anybody that showed up. So that's a whole other story that we could talk for hours on. But that evolved too now to where the industry does that industry does.
So
you're
like
more organized program.
Yeah.
So I had infinite number of
is,
people.
Right.
Of people that take diving.
Your whole career is based on large part people who want to experience scuba for the first time.
Right.
So and scuba is potentially very dangerous if you get in the wrong situation. So my question is there a moment where you were like fearful for a person?
If there was, I wouldn't tell you.
Was it me?
No. But I should qualify why I'm still in North Dakota though too, because see, with not being Jamaican, and then I started building my business in North Dakota, but I still had the ability to get away when and then I also, the resorts I was working with weren't scuba resorts. They were resorts that had scuba. They were I wanted to be able to sell those properties that I knew intimately that the average travel agent, so to speak, wouldn't. So I had to become a travel agency, and then I had and with Super Club support, as an example, I became a travel agency. But the difference is that I really try to stick with the Caribbean and Mexico and the all-inclusive, and as opposed to I mean, I could sell it whatever, but now with the internet, you can find people that specialize in specific areas, and you can and then that would be me for the tropics, and not necessarily scuba. Scuba what got me the work permits, but it was the resorts were not diving resorts, so to speak.
So you worked in Jamaica for a while, and what was in your mind when you were like, I'm gonna make a go of this full time in North Dakota?
Well, I for quite a while I kept thinking I should get try to find some other career, but I always had. It's like, well, should I do that, or should I like go back to Jamaica for a couple of weeks, or should I go to, or should I, do another group trip, or should I do another, or, you know what I mean? And so then over time, I faded on the idea of starting a different.
So
career.
you always had this idea like scuba is a for now thing, but I need to get a real job.
Exactly. That was the concept. Most of my
What was the dawning where you were like, this is a real job?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. There was never a what do you call it? Inspirational moment that did that. It was just a matter of time.
But I've been doing it for this long.
Yeah,
and
right. Why
things are okay.
I'm too old, too settled in.
Yeah.
No, so there was not a day that I woke up and said, I guess I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
I guess I can say that now though.
Well, your shirts are eye-catching because it says Dive North Dakota,
Right.
and it's a scuba diver in a
Right.
cattle trough.
Right.
But North Dakota has some diving, so tell me
Right,
about
that's the other thing.
about that.
I was surprised. We have surprisingly, spearfishing is legal in North Dakota. We have the most liberal spearfishing laws in the country. We can shoot northerns and walleyes, and if you're into it, you can actually shoot them, so to speak. There's like a time when the waters in Sakakawea is clear enough that and people even snorkel out. I know of people that have snorkeled out and limited out on their walleyes, with their snorkel. I know you do that. Brian does that. So yeah, and then of course the tail race has fish, and after the flood, the more of the paddlefish came over the top of the dam, and so and in the wintertime they'll come up upstream to because the fish go upstream, and so then and that's open all the time, so you could actually dive there and you'll see.
Yeah, and
on a
so
regular
for
basis.
people who don't know, paddlefish are
Filter feeders.
Filter feeders, but they're like a shark without the teeth.
Yeah.
But they are 4 feet.
Right, they're big
Plus.
big fish, yeah. And then also there's the sturgeon. We got big sturgeon in the river.
Sturgeon
but they
as
need
well.
moving water in order to breathe. So both of them, more so the sturgeon. I'm not a marine biologist.
You've seen the paddlefish, obviously.
Yes, yeah.
I saw a paddlefish for the first time last summer, snorkeling
Oh yeah.
on Lake Sakakawea.
Right.
Farther west than the tail race, like quite a ways in
Sure.
just one of the bays.
Yeah, and
It was about the coolest. I
Exactly.
think the coolest moment of diving for me.
That's one of mine was seeing the paddlefish in the lake when you just swim along and then you just
'Cause
turn sideways and there's that big paddle.
What a lot of
sticking
people
out.
don't really get is in like a freshwater and Lake Sakakawea, they think it's really muddy. Well, it is. It's not the Bahamas,
No.
but you can see some stuff. But it is murky,
Right.
murkier. So it would be like maybe even me to you or something. But
Right.
then me to you, and then all of a sudden you see this.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
That's eerie,
really cool,
scary,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
really, really cool.
When I grew up going to Lake Skakawea, and the paddlefish were like things of legend.
Yeah, exactly.
And we were always scared of them. When you fall off the tube,
Yeah,
or
worry about
water
the
skiing
paddlefish,
or
yeah.
wakeboarding or whatever, you're always like,
But
your mind automatically
Right.
goes, there's paddlefish around
Yeah.
my feet.
but they don't have any teeth. They eat their filter feeders. They
Right.
eat the slime out of
It'd
the
have to
water.
be
Wish
a
somebody
freak
would have told
accident.
10-year-old me that.
Yeah, well, 10-year-old you could have been forgotten, swallowed up.
Yeah.
There's always been legend and stuff at so Lake Sakakawea, the reservoir on the Missouri River, has the intake structure,
Right.
which is taller than the Capitol building.
Exactly.
I understand.
Yep.
And everyone I always talked to, people growing up, people would be like, "You'd never believe the
Yeah,
things
big
you'd see
fish
down there,
yeah.
big fish down there."
Yeah.
But you're the guy.
Yeah.
Is that true?
I see. I've done commercial. Like I refer to it as lake commercial. On most of all the power plant intakes on the river that I can think of. And for every major government agency, and I've never seen any monster other than what you see. Actually see more in the tail race because they go up. There's more paddlefish in the tail race.
So if anyone was going to see the river monsters
they've
of
been
legend,
go to the tail race. Right
yeah, there's mermaid stories.
now. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, if there is, I wouldn't tell you.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
When people are scuba diving, there's like different depths that they can go to, and
Right.
and then they have to take a decompression
Right.
stops coming back up. So at what depth is it no longer safe to, like, what's the outer
Okay,
reaches?
well, from a sport diving perspective, the deepest we're supposed to go is 130 feet. It's recommended as a sport diver that you'll go below 100, and as a novice, beginners it would be 60 feet is the recommended depth.
So at like 100 feet for recreation,
Yeah.
and then you have a dive clock or a
Timer. Yeah,
computer.
now everything's computerized, so
So you have it on
yeah,
your watch,
yeah,
and you
yeah,
can
but-
see,
yeah, yeah,
hey,
it
you
tells
better
you.
stop at this point.
right. But we don't make.
Okay.
We never would stay down long enough that we have to we cannot go straight to the surface as sport divers.
Okay.
We always make sure that we have we have within the limits so to go directly to the surface.
Yeah, and so my understanding is that's the nitrogen in your blood.
Buildup, yeah,
So
yeah,
the nitrogen
yeah.
bubbles, you're just making big bubbles smaller
right.
to be able to survive coming back up.
Right. Yep.
Okay, so
Kind
when
of,
you
yeah.
do, sorry,
Yeah, pretty much.
yeah, I mean,
The nitrogen that you
oversimplified.
breathe in goes into your system
Yeah.
as a solution, and then when you come up, it wants to go back into a gas form.
Okay.
And so then and if it does it in your bloodstream, then you have bubbles in there. That's the bad thing.
I read there's a book called Shadow Divers.
Oh
which-
yeah, I read that too. Yeah,
It's a good
I
one.
met those people. I got a picture on my wall of those guys.
Really?
I got a poster with their signatures. You know.
Oh, that's too cool.
Yeah.
They did.
both
So
those
there was
guys.
a
John Chatterton and
Yeah,
John-
Chatterton.
Yeah, and
there was a U-boat, German U-boat
Mm-hmm.
wreck off the coast of New Jersey, like way closer than anyone expected that there would have been a U-boat wreck, and they had identified that it was a U-boat, and then that's become like the second deadliest dive site because for a lot of
it's so
reasons, but it's so deep, gets people there, and they were saying, well, first they were saying. When the crabs start talking to you, that's when you know you need to.
You need more air.
That's another issue.
Yeah.
That's
You
that's
get
decompression
knocked.
though. Yeah, nitrogen dissolves in your brain and then it makes you spacey. So there's two issues. Those are unrelated, not unrelated, but there's two issues you're dealing with. One is the nitrogen, narcosis they call it, nitrogen narcosis, and the other one is the decompression. We have the bubbles. Those are two different things.
Okay. Yes, two different things, and then the other thing is if. They said they would sooner take a knife to the throat than go straight to the surface.
Yeah.
And that freaked me out so much. But when you do commercial dive and stuff?
I don't. Yeah, light commercial. No, I'm talking stuff power plant in North Dakota.
Yeah.
so
Okay.
ten-
And so you're
you're talking
wrenching
10.
on some stuff, or
Yeah, wrenching stuff. Yeah.
Okay. And would that be like at the intake structure as well?
Right.
or-
Not at the intake on the dam. Which one? I've worked on Snag Creek quite a bit. The main one would be I've never been to the bottom of the main one. I've been on the lakes, the riverside, but not on the
Sure.
one. But I've been to 100 feet in Sakakawea many a times, and yeah, I've been to 100 feet where I get see it sitting there easy. The tree rows are still there. You know,
Tree rows are still there.
Yeah, the
Are-
that
so
lined up the river. You
It
know,
flooded in the 1950s something,
yeah,
and
so all the trees are still not all.
the trees
but-
are still standing up.
Yeah, the street. Yeah, the tree. You can see them on your depth finder. On your
So like cottonwood forests,
Right, exactly.
They're still
they're still there. Yep.
Because there's
Really?
a town.
Right.
There's a few towns.
there's a
Yeah,
few
not
towns
much
on
in
there?
North Dakota wasn't cleared out, so to speak.
so. If you dove the towns, there's not a lot to see there.
Yeah, there
anymore.
would not in North Dakota. There's some more, I think, in South Dakota, and then there's a few upstream a ways, up lake, but nothing of any substance. They pretty much leveled everything before they, when they moved out.
And there's a story about World War II, or maybe not World War
a
II, but
jet.
there's a jet. Okay, there's
Yeah.
a jet that
Right,
crash
into the ice.
landed.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's at the bottom of the
yes,
lake.
exactly. When Ed Schaefer was governor, he used to teach scuba. Ed Schaefer was, when I was living in Jamaica in those about those years, he had a house in Mexico, and then we'd charter a boat on Lake Superior to dive the wrecks. Okay, and then when he became governor, then we went up to look for that jet that we never found it, but the Morton County dive team, with the help of the state surveyor club or whatever, they found parts of it.
Okay.
Okay, but we never did. There's an article a couple articles out there I could show you that but they found pieces of the jet, and we actually one of the guys I was working with to set this up talked to the pilot who was working in California at the time. This was 30 years ago. He that actually wrote it, and he ejected before it hit the ice. Obviously But it was since it hit the ice, so it was pretty much there wasn't much, and they did send people down at that time to pick up whatever is of 80.
Sure. So now what's left is going to be
Yeah.
silt
Yeah,
covered
scrap,
pieces
probably,
of scrap
pieces
metal.
of parts. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know that they brought a few pieces up. In fact, they could show that it was actually the parts from the jet that they were looking for.
Okay.
So they had better luck than we did. But like
So-
one of the survey points had fallen into the lake, for instance, and so it was tough to, find it, triangulate it out like you can now.
So this was World War II era
It
airplane.
would be post if it's jet, right?
It went down in the 60s.
Oh,
okay.
60s. Oh.
So it was a
No, I-
training.
Yeah, it was.
thing?
I assume from the base.
Yeah.
But it was some training, person or. From,
And is there anything else that's
Of substance?
of note under the water in Sakakawea because of the history that's there, or because of the towns that are underwater? Or is it just
not so? I know that when the water was low, pieces of a couple of the towns were out of the water, but it was of such a little consequence that it wouldn't make much for and it's not in a clear area either. You know what I mean? So it's not as inviting as it would be if it was in a clearer part of the lake.
so? You do have to fight clarity. So when you have, and we'll talk about the services at Scuba One, but when you go to Scuba One, you do your open water. You kind of have to hunt around different mud lines a little bit to see what's
Well, we only need to go to for the class class we only need to go to 20 feet. So, and the first two dives not more than 40, and the second two not more than 60. So but you only have to get 20. So, but I would argue that taking a class in North Dakota, where with our visibility and temperatures and stuff, you're going to be as your skill level will be as good as the guys in the tropics because they don't have to deal with
Sure.
the wetsuits and the dirty water.
The first time I went out on the open waters, like when you have the nerves and everything, because it's like one thing breathing underwater and you get like anxiety about that, but then to actually be in nature and then get your surroundings and things. So I had done a class with you and some friends, and that's when we learned for the very first time. And we did some compass work, and then you had us do some drills underneath the water, and I got to lead. So there's a buoy, a dive buoy, and it's attached to a rope, and so I got to lead and kind of navigating our way around. And it's like it doesn't seem like you're working that hard when you're doing it, and at the end you're exhausted because you're moving heavy things around all day, and it's like it's a very athletic thing, but you feel like you're an explorer. You feel like this is quite an adventure. So people can sign up if they're going to do a vacation or something like that. They'll talk to Scuba One, and you can do these classes.
Okay.
Can you talk us through that?
Okay, here's how it works now is we break the class into 3 sections. First off, you can do the entire course while you're on vacation, okay, or you can do parts of it ahead of time, so you don't have to do the whole thing on vacation. So there's an online class now that we have everybody take, and you could and if you do the online class, then in theory you wouldn't have to do that. Sitting on a beach, you wouldn't have to be sitting. You can be done with it. Okay, then you can do the pool work. Then the next section is the pool work. So if you do the pool work with us, then when you go on your vacation, then in theory you're prepared to just go dive then. Okay, with an instructor and do the diving portion of the course. So that'd be the third portion. So that there's the online part, the pool part, and then the open water part. And we offer the open water part in North Dakota, of course. But you could, like I said, a lot of the people do it with the intent of not planning on diving in North Dakota. They plan to do it with they just don't want to spend their vacation, taking the course, and then going in a swimming pool. They just want to go diving. So that's how we break it down now, and as do most companies.
Yeah, and how long does it take from?
Good question. I've been told and the online class is approximately 8 to 10 hours, so it's a pretty serious online class. And then the pool work, we can do that. It's performance based, so some people can spend days and days and days on it, and other people can get the skills done in a couple of days or even a day, depending on their skill level and how proficient, and maybe they've done it already. And then the open water part, you have to make 4 open water dives over a 2-day period, so it's at least 2 days in open water. Because you can't make more than 3 dives in a day, and you have to make 4 dives. So
How many people do you suppose you've taught?
boy, I don't even want to throw out a number. It would be I couldn't even, because there again, when I was working in Jamaica, then the scuba was free, so we'd have a full class every day.
Yeah.
And but all I did was we would take them in the pool and then take them out in the lake, or excuse me, the ocean the next morning. In fact, we used when they made the first James Bond movie, that when you see Ursula Andress, coming out of the ocean on the beach, that's what we
I
used
remember.
that's James Bond Beach, we call it. Of course, there's a number of James Bond beaches, but that's the one where that's what we use as our marker spot to mark to put the boat, so that we would know where to take. Because there was a shallow reef area there right in front of that beach that we used daily. But the point being is that it's the same history.
So more than 500 people?
Boy, I don't even want to give a number. I don't know.
So okay, then, but you've taught a lot of people.
Yeah.
Are there people who are uncoachable?
Well, no. It's if anybody can do it if they just stick with it. It's just a matter of whether or not they can keep. We don't send them. We don't fail anybody, but we won't pass them until they can do the skills. Mm-hmm. So you can't. They may consider themselves, that they can't do it. But there is a swim test too, though. You're required to snorkel 12 lengths of the pool and tread water for 10 minutes. So you should do that.
I mean, I know that it's super safe, but I also know when you're guided, with someone like you. But I also know I've been a swimmer for a long time, open water swimming and everything, and I still like that first time I was anxious. So I just imagine. Like there'd be people who aren't comfortable in the water, and then how do you manage that freak out?
Well, the good question. There's any number of techniques you can use as you would use with any industry, but you just keep working on it, and some people, if they give up, that's they're giving up. We'll still work with any you can't fail it, so to speak, but you can not. You have to. You can't
put it in.
Put the time into the finishing the skills.
Okay. No, that's good. Now, what about, have you ever done cave diving?
The cavern more so. And I took a group to Mexico, and we included a cavern. A cavern means that you can see a light spot. You can see lights from anywhere that you're at.
Would you
cave diving in particular? I can't really remember any place that it was other than little tiny inlets and stuff.
That seems like such a dangerous extreme sport. Would you, because you're a scuba diver, would you agree that that's a dangerous extreme sport?
I would agree. It takes a different set of skills.
Okay.
Same like people will go deeper than the sport diving depths, and that's a different set of skills and different set of equipment and a different set of skills.
Do you have any desire to do any of that?
I personally don't.
Okay.
No. I never. The travel thing is what lit me up as much as the going to new areas and new adventures and stuff. But as far as when I was younger, even then I'm not sure. I was more interested in seeing new places than I was doing technical stuff, going deeper.
What's your favorite spot in the tropics?
Everybody asks that, but there's really no such thing as a favorite spot because some places may have different fish that you're looking for, but then maybe it's a long ways out and it's a long boat ride, or there's in the wind or whatever. So there's not really a favorite spot for diving. They're all different, and they have the good points and bad points for everyone.
How about your favorite spot to go? Like you said, with you and your wife went to Jamaica.
Oh,
a favorite spot even just to like see and relax.
Well, we would go there now because of the history we have.
Right.
I mean, if the school would have sent me to Hawaii or to someplace else, then I probably would have a history there. But I just happened to have have a history with that culture and that island.
No one's wondering where he and his wife should go.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to go to Jamaica.
Yeah, and you come see me because and there's a lot of couples-based honeymoon type stuff. Not even necessarily honeymoon, but a lot of couples type. And the whole, like I said, the whole all-inclusive concept started with the couples resort, the chain couples resort. The government had these hotels and they were trying to figure out what to do with them, and somebody said, well, let's take the Club Med concept and add liquor and that everything, airport transfers, scuba, everything, and then that's how, and that was a couple's Tower Isle was the resort, and then everybody copied that. Sandals copied it. They were the founder of Sandals in his autobiography says that he was selling air conditioners and he saw the couple's concept and he said, "Wow, it's really working." And so then he took it to another level, a different
What the
level.
heck?
But and so the whole care, and then like the super clubs, they did it, with lots of hotels. But then other companies came along, and did it with hotels that were much larger and whatever. And so then they sold their properties together for which is another story. And retired. So actually that was the issue is, the owners wanted to retire and so then they sold the resorts they had.
So jumping to North Dakota really quick, there's kind of the looming threat of zebra mussels.
Yes,
and things
and that is a
moving
really
in.
close threat. I just talked to somebody that does zebra mussel cleaning in South Dakota off the Oahe Dam, not off the dam itself, but off the intakes south of Pierre. He lives in Pierre and he's down there doing zebra mussel work. They haven't been the great, we're going to get them. Okay, of course we want to put it off as long as we can, but I don't know how we cannot if they're that close.
In the same system.
Yeah, in the same system, exactly. And I know Minnesota. Don't quote me. I thought I heard that somewhere. Maybe there again. I just know that if they're in Pierre, that they're just a matter of time.
How do zebra mussels move? Boats or
Boats.
can they move
Yeah,
themselves?
people bring their boat out, they go fishing down there, then they come up here to go fishing, and then they hit their bilge pump.
Yeah,
That's
they
the main
don't
reason.
clean, inspect.
Right. So it's not like the mussels are moving their way up.
No, because the dam is
They're
there.
riding on.
Yeah, and boat trailers and
Boat trailers have seaweed that
Yeah,
has a zebra mussel, whatever. Are they in Lake Skakawea now? Do you think?
Not that I know of. You'd
Okay.
have to ask the, Game and Fish.
Yeah.
But, well, you'd sure think so. If they're in Pierre, you'd sure think they're in.
Wow.
What's the
Okay.
easiest way to make sure you don't transport zebra mussels?
Well, talk to the Game and Fish, but make sure make sure you clean out your bilge and.
Yeah,
and your
now
trailer.
there's a big push, so
Yeah.
every boat ramp says clean, inspect, drain, that kind of thing. Don't just don't come from Minnesota.
Yeah.
and jump
Well,
in
you
there.
see
Even
that
South
everywhere.
Dakota now, yeah.
Even just on the highway, driving back from Minnesota, it's like don't transport unwanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't use them as bait.
Yeah, oh, that's a really big problem. Yeah.
What can people do to learn how to scuba dive?
Well, they can call and they can actually sign up for the online class right there. My website, there's a link there.
Your website is Scuba One Travel.
ScubaOne.com,
Scuba1.com.
Yeah, ScubaOne.com and ScubaOneTravel.com is more scuba specific, but that's
Okay.
mine also. But Scuba One is the easiest to remember. That's a registered trademark of mine that I have, so to speak. And then
Yeah.
I have the Scuba with a number one and Scuba ONE. I have both websites.
And are you're chock full this summer?
No, I never have too many. I got other people
Okay.
that are teaching with me now too, so we can find you more people. Remember, you can always find.
Last question I have is when you're not instructing, is scuba still fun for you?
Oh yeah, and the travel part of it.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
And so what would be like
I just want the easy stuff though. I
yeah,
know it works
what
out
would
well.
be like a thing you would do just on a day where you want to go out and scuba? Where would you head?
That's a good question. I mean, in the tropics or?
Here or the
Oh, I don't
tropics?
know.
Yeah, like what is the difference between the fun of diving here and the fun of diving in the tropics?
Oh, it's the same. They did a study too. They thought scuba wouldn't really be so big in the inlands, and then here they find people actually do enjoy
the sport of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Randy, thank you very much for joining us. It's been awesome to talk to you. And scuba1.com.
Yeah.
Learn more about Randy, learn more about his business, and learn how to breathe underwater.
Yep. And if you need a vacation, let me know.
Oh, and if you need a
And
vacation.
I work with all the major companies, the major suppliers. So I found out that as a scuba person, I couldn't compete with the local travel agents or even the people online unless I became a real travel agency, and I worked with Delta Vacations and United Vacations, and all the major suppliers out of North Dakota.
So you got a vacation in mind?
Yeah, give me a call.
Scuba1.com.
Yeah, Scuba1.com. Yeah. I mean, then I was selling vacations online to strangers for when I was working with super clubs, and I sold a trip to a couple from Monte Carlo, and here we're sitting next to the pool, and I listened to the guy next to me, and I recognize his voice, and here he bought his vacation from me. So I've sold vacations to people literally all over the world, but there again, people in North Dakota, they buy from people in other parts of the world, and then here I am, right down the street, and they selling to people all
Monte
over the
Carlo,
world.
one of the most probably oceanside, hottest destinations in the world, and there you were sitting next to them.
We got North Dakota.
That's awesome. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in. I'm Brian Jackson with Mighty Missouri Coffee. With me is Nolan Johnson with Quantum Digital. So if you like how this sounds and looks, thanks to Quantum Digital, if you like the way that this smells and tastes, that's thanks to Mighty Missouri Coffee